As farmers, I think we all enjoy the challenge. If somebody says you can't do it, it's like there's nothing better than the neighbor stopping you in the cafe and coming up and says, "How in the world did you get that planted?" And it's like, "Come on out, I'll show you." So.
South Dakota farmer Ron Hesla and his family like to find solutions for everyday problems.
I came up with a number of simple kind of inventions. I'm one of those guys that when I go into my superstore for just going through and looking at shapes of objects and things and different things that stand out to me that could be, it's taking something that is and making it something that it never was to make it do something that was never done. My wife inherited some river bottom ground. It's kind of the first to flood and the last to be dried enough to go in and plant. When we inherited that, we just decided that we were going to make that work, and I guess that's what farmers do. If you tell a farmer you can't do that, you're more likely going to see him out tomorrow working on it, because that's just the way they all operate, I guess.
Weather challenges are all too familiar for farming families like the Heslas. While years of tinkering with objects to address problems, Ron stumbled on a simple yet very useful invention.
It's actually an occurrence that's all too familiar to all of us in farming when the weather doesn't cooperate. In this case, being too much water where the land takes on a pretty high saturation level. The cavity in between the disc, which opens the seed furrow, and the wheel itself becomes compacted quite often with mud. And that's a long, tedious process. That's when we got to get the screwdriver out. I found a wheel one morning when the one on this side was plugged, and as I took that off, I actually saw a perfectly round ball, like a super ball, rolling on the rim next to it that hadn't plugged. And I got to thinking, gosh, it must start in that small operation of just grabbing more mud and more particles and getting bigger, and finally not getting through all the obstacles that are into rotating of equipment when we're planting. I said, gosh, I think if we open it up, we could probably let the problem out before it becomes plugged.
Really, this was something that we just wanted for our own farm. It was a constant fight every year. Even in the driest years, the river bottom field was usually part of the river bottom. It went out of the banks all the time. Ron's neighbors who farmed down there, they actually sold all the fields on the adjoining fence lines. They said, "You're crazy, you'll never get a crop out of that field." And Ron had said, "I will find a way to do this." So from his original concept, we sort of would sit around and tinker with this idea for ourselves, which turned into the neighbors who had sold their fields wondering, how did you get a crop in there? And I know you are not using the planter you had last year. There'd be no way you could plant that.
Shortly after we discovered the opening in the wheel and rectified that problem, we discovered there were other areas that the plugging can start. We think we have some other products that really augment it and make just about anything plantable anywhere for anyone.
Ron also invented a scraper system that's self-sharpening and requires no tools to assemble. The scraper attaches to a planter's disc and scrapes mud and debris out of the spoked gauge wheel.
Regardless of brand of equipment, a row unit like this is what everybody has, which means if we have the problem, chances are, farmers around the world all running that same similar equipment are going to have that issue as well. And we realized, if this has made our life easier, if it's given us better crops and better harvest, why wouldn't it do it for everybody else everywhere as well?
Ron and Eric continue to tinker. Currently, ProMax holds 5 patents with more pending.
We still farm that river bottom ground because it's always revealing more all the time, for things that might actually make things just that little bit better.